Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. The acquittal of the 3 Memphis cops who took part in killing Trye Nichols is devastating. It's devastating. It's a slap in the face. It's disgusting. It's repugnant. It's offensive. It's maddening. It shows a reckless disregard for Black life. It endangers Black life. It shows that Black lives don't matter. I'm sitting here, I'm very emotional right now. My heart goes out to the family of Trye Nichols. Please join me in taking a moment of silence in memory of his death, his tragic, needless death. Thank you. This is a miscarriage of justice. And this is coming from me, someone who practices both criminal defense and civil rights law. This is a horrendous verdict, a horrific verdict. We saw what happened. We saw this handcuffed man being pummeled with haymakers. We saw what we saw. The video showed it. He was handcuffed, and they took turns hitting him upside his head. We saw the video. And again, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I am often on the side of the criminal defendant. And I do respect the law that they have been found not guilty. But that not guilty verdict is a miscarriage of justice. And I pray the state appeals this. And do keep in mind that they were found guilty in federal court, but not of the more serious charges. So now they await sentencing in federal court. But we know who we have in office. And he just put out an executive order enshrining police officers, promising to give them more indemnification, for example, more militarization. This is horrible. This is sad. You know, my family has dealt with having someone killed under questionable circumstances, and you feel the injustice of that. But then when the so-called justice system doesn't give you justice, you feel like you have just been stomped and kicked in the face all over again, this time by the system. I'm going to read some words here from the Washington Post, who reported on this. This is one of the assistant district attorneys who tried this case. And do keep in mind, the officers were African Americans, I think, with the exception of one. That doesn't make any difference here. In fact, Professor Paul Butler of the Georgetown Law Center wrote a book entitled Chokehold, and he, in his book, reported some information I knew nothing about. He said that black officers are more likely to shoot and kill black people than white officers. Although white officers kill more black people, it is the black officers who tend to kill black people disproportionately. So it does not matter that these officers are black. They receive the same training and have the same advantages and privileges that the white ones do. You would think that they would be more conscientious, but according to Professor Paul Butler, you would be wrong. So this says a state jury found 3 former Memphis police officers not guilty of second-degree murder in the 2023 beating death of Trye Nichols that helped galvanize the movement to reform police conduct. The jurors deliberated for a day and a half after 7 days of testimony that delved into the minutes after police pulled over Nichols for a traffic stop and when the 29-year-old FedEx worker was repeatedly hit and kicked by the officers. To me, their analysis should have been centered around when he was getting beat to death. All right, not way back when they stopped him, but what happened to him after he was handcuffed, defenseless, and posing no threat to those officers. That's where this case should have been decided. Because what he did before that was most likely a misdemeanor. Running from the police. That was most likely a misdemeanor, a few days in jail, maybe even probation. What the focus should have been on was what happened to him, especially after he was handcuffed. And we saw what happened to him. And then after he was nearly beaten to death, we saw with our own eyes, they placed him up beside a car, and he did not get any medical care for quite some time. He was handcuffed in and barely hanging on, it seemed. We saw that. Prosecutors had argued the officers had a duty to protect Nichols, but became angry when he fled after being pulled over. I've seen that a lot. Those officers' attitudes are quite often, you make me run. When I catch you, I'm going to punish you. In other words, I'm going to brutalize you. I'm going to use excessive force because you made me run. Prosecutors had argued the officers had a duty to protect Nichols, but became angry when he fled after being pulled over. Now, let me say this is very important. There's a case, it's Tennessee versus Garner, and it prohibits police officers from shooting an unarmed fleeing felon. They can't shoot him if he's running away unless he poses a threat of serious bodily injury or death to the officers or to someone else. I wasn't in trial. I don't know if they presented any evidence to support such a claim, but I don't think so. But the problem is there are other cases, and in fact, there are other cases here that are involved in this that gives the police a lot of deference. A lot. I'll show you. Defense attorneys for the officers countered that their clients followed police procedure and had tough jobs that require split-second decisions. That phrase, split-second decisions, comes straight out of a Supreme Court case that qualified the Tennessee v. Garner case. In other words, the United States Supreme Court issued a case after the Tennessee versus Garner case that essentially said you shouldn't question police officers. They're making split-second decisions. They deal with very dangerous situations. And that's precisely what they said to this jury. And by the way, it is being reported. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's being reported by other networks that the jury was all white. I don't know if that's true. I do know that they got a change of venue because the jury they used, instead of being from Memphis, that jury came out of the Chattanooga area. And that area is a whole lot more white and conservative than Memphis, which is majority black. So the defense lawyers did exactly what I would have done. We can't get a fair trial in here. Judge, we want to change a venue. So they did that, and they got that. And so if they had an all-white jury, one has to ask, how is it that they ended up with an all-white jury? Now, again, a lot of it is because the Chattanooga area is largely white, predominantly white, so there weren't very many blacks probably in the jury pool. And so if there were any, they were able to get rid of them. I presume they did what we call Batson challenges. And the prosecutors, I'm sure, I hope, if it was appropriate, said to the judge essentially that they're getting rid of these black jurors because they're black. I don't know if that happened or not. But if indeed there was an all-white jury, that explains a lot. On the evening of January 7, 2023, Nichols was driving to his home in a nearly all-black neighborhood in East Memphis when an officer noticed him speeding up to beat a red light. The officer didn't find any warrants after running Nichols' plates, but decided to pull him over. And this was some special unit that Memphis had. You remember that? And when they found out that he had no outstanding warrants, that should have caused them to de-escalate the matter. Because they know now he's not a fugitive, he's not a person on the run from a warrant or something. So let's diffuse this some. Nichols managed to run away after being pulled from his car and forced to the ground. Now, some of you are going to say, well, that's what caused him to get beat to death. You're wrong. You're wrong. It is an offense to run from police officers. Here we call it evade an arrest. And if you're doing it on feet, it is a misdemeanor, which means you probably won't even go to jail. You'll get arrested, but your lawyer will probably get you probation or may get the case dismissed. If you're in a car, then it is a felony and, things go up at that point. But under either circumstances, the penalty should not be death for an unarmed man. He should not have gotten beat to death. Cops are not the prosecutor, judge, jury, and the hangman. They're law enforcement. They have their job to do. And that does not include beating a handcuffed man to death. The confrontation was captured by a police camera at the intersection, lasted a few minutes before officers picked up Nichols and laid him against a car. We saw that. An additional 22 minutes passed before a stretcher was brought out for Nichols and he was taken to a hospital in critical condition. That's what I just told you. We saw every bit of that on videotape. This was a miscarriage of justice. This was a repugnant acquittal. This is offensive. It endangers all of us African Americans. It sends the message that you can beat a black man to death. Cops can beat black men to death on camera merely because they ran away. Merely because the black man ran away. That tells you how much our lives matter. And again, I will not allow you, if you say in the comments that these were black officers, it doesn't matter that they were black. It's not. Policies can be racist. Policies can be detrimental to black people, even if they are practiced by black people. Black people can practice racist policies. So when they said that these cops, when the defense attorneys said that these cops followed procedure, that's not the end of story. Especially if the procedures are racist. That is what we call systemic racism. Racism that is not based on the individual, is based on the system. The patterns and practices and policies and customs of the system. This verdict comes at a pivotal moment for police reform efforts. That's so very true. Just given the fact that Trump is in the White House, given the fact that MAGA is in control of the government. And like I said, he just released this executive order that will militarize and unleash cops into our community. And some of you said, that's okay, we need it. Trust me, you don't want this. You don't want that in your community. You don't want that. There are other ways that we can get control of the crime that you see in your neighborhood. Although I told you, the facts show, as of 2023, violent crime has dropped significantly. And some of you said, no, it hasn't. You're talking about anecdotes, and you're talking about specific cities, Memphis being one of them. And I never said there's no crime in these cities, Memphis and Chicago and so on, and others. I'm saying across the country, violent crime has sharply decreased, which negates the need for militarized police officers in black neighborhoods doing what these cops did. The verdicts come at a pivotal moment for police reform efforts. Advocates hope the case would show that rogue officers could be held accountable and worried that an acquittal could stall their movement or momentum, I would say. And that's where we are. That's where we are. Those of us in this space who wanted to see more police reform are now facing this verdict, this acquittal, in one of the clearest cases of excessive force that we've ever seen. Public support for reform sparked by the death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police has waned significantly since 2020. According to the Pew Research Center, President Donald Trump campaigned on a platform of empowering officers to aggressively clean up American cities, and his Justice Department has essentially halted federal efforts to hold local police departments accountable. That is a double whammy. We get this not guilty verdict, which is a slap in the face. And we got a person in office who just released an executive order who's doing exactly what he said he would do. And many of you still voted for him. In addition to the slap in the face, now we're getting kicked in the butt. And God knows what else these officers are going to do now that they have a president who's wanting to give them even more power and hold them less accountable. And some of you said you're all for it. You're not. Trust me, you're not. The 3 officers were already found guilty of several federal charges, including excessive force resulting in injury, but were acquitted last year of the most serious ones, including civil rights violations resulting in death. They have not been sentenced on those charges yet. Well, I'm not going to read any more of this. This is just horrible. It's horrific. Like I said, it endangers all Black lives. This sends a message. Trump already sent one with his executive order. This sends an additional message that you can do what we saw. Beat a handcuffed man to death. Get the right jury, and you'll be found not guilty. Another thing that a lot of you said in that video was, well, if you obey the law, you don't have anything to worry about. You do not know American history. Because American history is filled with cases of police officers who started out as slave patrols, killing innocent, unarmed Black people. That is as American as apple pie and baseball. And in recent history, we've seen it again and again and again and again. Breonna Taylor, Tatiana Jefferson, Philando Castile, and many, many more in recent history. This is horrific, you all. This is what I was trying to warn you about in my last video. So my prayers truly go out to the Nichols family. I know that they're devastated right now. I can imagine. I see his mother's face. I see her face right now. But this has larger ramifications, not just for her and her family, but for all African Americans. This is what the U.S. Supreme Court called the badges and incidents of slavery. Our lives were never valued during slavery, and we're still dealing with that to this day. To this day. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I'm Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Remember, I hope you're listening. Stay woke.